everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the beautiful audience, my wonderful listeners around the globe. Thank you for coming to the Leadership Heart Podcast. I'm Sandra J. Horton, and yes, I am known as a growth catalyst, but truly I am all about here on the Leadership Heart Podcast about leading with heart. And today I am absolutely inspired to have a really great, wonderful, amazing woman who I call my friend to be able to come to speak from her heart in an amazing leadership that she has and what she does in her normal, everyday, wonderful life. Trish Mandewo is my guest today. And I'm going to bring and just do a little bit of bio here before I bring you up, Trish. Trish is truly a distinguished and award-winning entrepreneur. She's a specialist in governance, policy, and engagement. She's an accomplished author and speaker and respected local government elected official. And she is a visionary founder and CEO of Synergy Executive Boards and Consulting Group. I'm going to bring Trish up now. Welcome, Trish. I have a lot more to share on you, but I wanted to give a little bit of a roadway there. And one of the things that I truly value about Trish is that she's had this beautiful, unique journey as someone who was new to Canada and has truly engaged and has come into her own servant leadership. She has an amazing background, and we'll go through that. She was actually awarded as RBC's top 25 Canadian immigrants, being a recipient of Canada's 150 sequential leadership pin. And I probably said that wrong, but that's okay. And being named one of the top 100 accomplished Black women in Canada. Woo! I'm so proud of you. I think that's so amazing. And Trish's commitment to service extends beyond her participation in over 25 boards throughout her illustrious career. And importantly, right now, she is sitting as president of the Union of BC Municipalities, amazing organization, vice president of the Women's Enterprise Center, We BC, and sits as the advisory board member of the SFU's Chang Institute of Business. And importantly, in our community, is second term city councillor for the city of Coquitlam and board member of the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities. And importantly, her dedication to herself, to others, and to her family, which is what I absolutely adore. And I'm always inspired by all that you do, Trish. So welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast.
Thank you, Sandy. It's never easy to listen to someone talking about you. I always want to find somewhere to crawl, right?
Oh, you're so beautiful, but you deserve it. You work so hard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have our
Thank you. Yes. This is a great opportunity. And I know that you are just setting the context for the listeners. You've just flown back from an amazing week. You were in Ottawa and you were engaged with some really wonderful opportunities for growth and for excitement that will be brought back here to the through the Union of UBCM. And importantly, though, as a woman, Trish, you've had these amazing moments of growth and collaboration, us together for many, many years. And I've always admired that when I reflect back to your journey as someone, when I first met you, you were relatively new to Canada. You had come up from Zimbabwe to the US into Canada. When you reflect back, how did you discover your inner strength and to align to the vision of the leader that you've become today?
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Sandy. I'll start by saying, you said I just came from Ottawa. I'm still trying to juggle different time zones. I was in Cambodia a couple of weeks ago, and then I was home for 1 week, and then I headed to Ottawa. But what I love is how my worlds just intersect, and everything that I do is it kind of just flows together. And how did I come to be the person that I am today? I really credit the way that I was raised, because I'm one of 7 girls. So there are 7 of us, and I am number 6 out of 7. And, so we didn't have any brothers in the family. And just how our parents raised us was to just say, you are the leader that you are, and that you should not look for anyone to really, create that path for you, but that you should look for it. And both my mom and dad were equally passionate about just empowering us to be the best that we could be. And, often I sit and I reflect on how much I learned from my dad and how much I learned from my mom. Even though Zimbabwe is a patriarchal country, the matriarchy still, was rising. And it was through her strength that I was learning. And we're very oral culture. So it was through learning and looking at how she went with her own leadership that I became the person that I am today. And of course, education helps, right? My dad was a firm believer that even though culturally, they didn't agree to sending girls to higher education, but my dad was like, no, they're all going to get educated. They're going to be the best that they can be. So, and I ended up in university doing microbiology and embryology. And that education has also helped me to really find that comfort in my leadership journey, because it just edifies the work that I do. So, in a nutshell, that's through, the growth of growing up and learning from parents, and then education, and then, of course, meeting amazing people like yourself.
Aw,
Surrounding
thank you.
great
You,
influences.
Trish, it's interesting when I reflect on self-advocacy, and we've both seen each other as we've been growing, and that journey of knowingness, of knowing self, of knowing our own, like, who am I? Where am I going? How do I get there? And how do I stay there? I talk about that in my book, and I know we share in your great book. I have to bring it up, Growth Strategies for the Hungry Entrepreneur. I was so blessed to be in that book. It's really important that the listeners understand the self-advocacy, because really it's up to you as an individual to be open to growth, to be open, like you're saying, to learning, to saying, hey, I have this opportunity right now to stand in my own power. And your work that you're doing now with Synergy really is also looking at self-advocacy. So can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of self-advocacy for what you do too?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if I can tie self-advocacy to one of my favorite books, The 4 Agreements, that talks about, one of the aspects is the mitote, which is that cloud that is over us, that prevents us from truly being who we want to be. But a lot of times that cloud comes from the fact that we are born into a family that we don't select. All of us, we're just born into the families that we're born in. And you learn the values from the family that you're born in. For some, I was privileged to be in a family that supported me, that looked for that light in me and helped me spark that light. But for others, it's not that. So it is up to all of us to realize that, we've got all these values that we're raised with, but now as adults, or even as young adults, who truly do we want to be? And can we turn off the noise around so that we can say, this is who I am and this is who I want to be, unapologetically? So I find that, in order to do so, you need to look at advocating for yourself. Because a lot of times we're looking for the people around us to do it for us. But everybody else, I tell young people, I'm like, everyone else is busy surviving. They're advocating for themselves. So if you are not advocating for yourself, then you're being left behind. So the importance of self-advocacy is it makes us truly believe that we can do what we want to do, and that only we are in charge of our path, and only we are in charge of changing the persona or the way that people perceive us from around us, right? So if anyone could just sit down and say, do I believe that I am the person that I want to be? And if not, what do I need to change? That's kind of where I come from.
I love that. And even just understanding I really do believe, like, whether it's you look at great, masters like Napoleon Hill and his success formula, I actually have it up there, the self-confidence formula. A part of that is knowingness that from within, we can reprogram our subconscious mind. We have that power. And for many individuals, they may not realize that they're stuck in the past with self-limiting beliefs, ways of believing, like the old stories. We're both storytellers. The old stories of what my mom and dad or others have told me, my school teachers. Oh, you're this way. It's like a fixed mindset. Oh, you're like this. And some people move forward with just that knowledge, and they're closed. They're not open. They haven't transformed to have and understand that self-advocacy, that I need to step up. I have the power within my own 2 feet to move forward. So as someone who has done that good work, one of the important things that I wanted to ask you is, you've excelled in so many different multiple roles, from entrepreneur to nonprofit leader to elected official. These are all amazing, courageous roles that you've taken. What has been your most transformative moment of that self-discovery that maybe unlocked this opportunity to know that's changed and shaped your leadership, that I could step in, that I can believe that I am that person?
Yeah, so I don't have one pivotal moment, but I've a few,
Love
right?
that.
So I'll kind of just highlight those in general. My very first one was when I was in high school, and I wasn't the greatest in math. I loved math, but I don't think math loved me back, if I can put it that way. So, but I
Really.
worked really hard because I wanted to get into sciences, and I knew I needed math. So one day we took a test. I was in Form 1 then, which is grade 8 over here. And we took the test, and the whole class, we didn't do well on the test. But I asked the teacher for the test to take it home. I took it home and I redid the whole test at home. We came back, and the practice was that next day we would all go through the whole exam. So when we came back the next day, the teacher is asking, why did you all miss this one? What were you supposed to do? I was raising my hand on everything because I had spent the previous day going through it and learning what I didn't do right. And he was so impressed. And he continued the rest of the term. He was using me as an example to say, be like Trish. Look at what she did. I was, by then I was going by the name Tarisai, which is my legal name. And he's like, be like her. So what that did for me is it gave me the courage and the confidence that I didn't have before. So suddenly I started thinking, I am great in math. If I could do it when I was at home, but I didn't do it when I was, in school, that means there was a disconnect there. So from that day on, I became a math whiz. But it took that one recognition from him and him using me as an example. So that really gave me a confidence educationally, like I can never explain. So that's one example. And now I go to, when I was working, and I was working as an embryologist in Oklahoma, and I was running one of the top fertility clinics. And the doctor who was the director for the program one day comes in, and I had done some amazing changes in the program that we needed based on best practice. But he would just parachute himself once every 4 or 5 months. He would come into the program. So he comes in, and he was mad that we had made the changes and I had led as the person that was leading it. And he said, "You're not paid to think."
My eyeballs just like, what?
And there I was, I'm going, this program is great because of the work that I'm doing. And you're telling me I'm not paid to think? But just because you're the director who is absent, you want to come whenever you want and just have a stagnant, right? And that was a life-changing moment for me. I quit that job, 6 months after, to go on my own and start my entrepreneurial journey. So that's also a pivotal moment to where something negative triggered me to say, I'm better than this. Where I'm not respected, I am not going to stay. Right. And it takes self-advocacy that we're talking about for someone to recognize that my self-worth is more important than me to be ridiculed and be looked down by someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
After 6 months, and the rest is history, and I went into entrepreneurship, and that's why now I am a successful entrepreneur in my own right. The third moment, and now this is in terms of spirituality and connectedness. In 2018, just before I ran for elections, I was turning 50. And at that time, I had made a commitment to do 50 new things before I turned 50. And the 50th thing was running for politics, but number 49 is what I want to talk about. The 49th was going to a 10-day silent retreat.
Ah, yes.
I love talking. I am a talker, as you know. And to go for 10 days with no eye contact and without talking terrified me. But that journey of doing that and connecting with my own body and connecting with my own mind and not being scared of being with my own thoughts was one of the greatest gifts I've ever given myself. And life has changed a lot since 2018. But what that did for me was unexplainable. And now I feel like I can face anything in my life because I did those 10 days. So yeah, so in a nutshell, those three moments always resonate with me on how they kind of changed the trajectory and how they made me a better person, a better leader, a better mom, a better husband, a better friend, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm reflecting back and I remember it is those quintessential moments of the aha, that realization that everything has now changed. I've changed. I realize that I'm not that story and I'm not fear. It's like we hit that fear pinnacle and then we find a new way, we go through it. And as we go through it, everything else is released, everything else is silenced. And it's that.
And isn't it interesting, though, that sometimes that change is driven by us, but sometimes it's external factors
Yes.
that force us to change it.
Yeah. I think that's a bigger piece, though, too, Trish. Like, I think that I can only speak for myself, but as a spiritual being, as someone of faith, I do feel that all things are brought to us. There's a purpose. We have a purpose. We have a divinely called way for us to give a connection, to use our gifts. And in finding that, we awakened to these different things. And I think I can speak on my side. I had to go through some pretty, ugly, tumultuous kind of times, which you came along with as well. And, it's really interesting that we get to a beautiful place where we just breathe, we center, we ground ourselves in the knowledge that that egoic way, that old fear and the ego loves to show up. That back brain primitive mind is like, hey, I'm here. I want to keep you stuck in your own place. But when you went into that retreat, you said to it, we're going to quiet that mind. We're going to quiet that mind and see what's new, what's possible.
And boy, did I ever know how busy that mind was. If I never did that, I would never know. Because I think we all have overactive minds too.
Yeah.
And if we can't control those overactive minds, they can actually hold us back, right?
They can, because they keep us busy. And this is an interesting piece, where we do it, like the Leadership Heart podcast, is we start with this whole self-discovery so we can get to know you and connect with you from that heart center. But as we're learning more about you, I'm reflecting about the importance of this change piece and being change ready. And as we know ourselves, we're growing, we're deciding. Now, in that change of your journey in this wonderful leadership role that you have now started this incredible synergy consulting group, which I'm so wonderfully excited that you've brought this to the world, because it's transformative, meaning it is a powerful force for change. So what inspired you to tackle the systemic barriers in boardrooms, particularly with diversity, and how did you prepare yourself and others to face the challenges of driving such meaningful change? Because we're seeing you're open, you're doing all this good work, and now you're taking it to the next level. And this is, again, very courageous to do this work.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sandy. So, if I go back to, I was talking about the privilege that I
Mm-hmm.
had, that, I was born in a family with only girls. So I don't have the story that others have that say, oh, my family loved my brother more than they loved me. Or, I was discriminated because I was a different race or a different ethnicity. I grew up in Zimbabwe where I was in the majority, right? It's majority Black people, and I am in a family with 7 girls, no boys. So I knew nothing but to be myself, and I didn't have any external forces that were holding me back for anything. So what that did is it gave me the confidence to where I can walk into any room and I'm not thinking about anything that might hold me back. I'm just walking in. I joke and say I walk in as Queen Trish, right? But if you go
Right.
to other people, they might have grown up with discrimination of being a woman in a culture where they were suppressed because they were a woman, or maybe they were a different race, maybe they were a different religion, and they were oppressed based on that. So when you grow up and you've got all those things holding you back, let's say you end up in Canada like I did, it's difficult for some people to then step into that leadership or to step into that greatness that they are, because you've got all this history of being held back and of being suppressed, right? So synergy was born exactly to empower. We want to empower the people from where they're at so that they can find their greatness, and we do it through governance, right? Because we know, and we work mostly with people that are in upper leadership, middle to upper leadership, that want to excel even more and get into the boardroom or get into the C-suite. And sometimes you find that people that's where they get stuck.
Mm.
So we're saying, how can you get unstuck? That personal work that they're doing, they can go to Sandy. Sandra can help them with that personal. But for us, we're going to empower you with the governance so that you can know the language to use when you get in the boardroom, so you can know how to challenge the systems. Use the very system that was built to oppress and suppress sometimes. Use the system to your advantage. But how can you do so without knowing it? So that's where we go into teaching people about governance. And also we teach people to, when they're going into the interviews, what is it that you need to look out for? How can you go in there prepared so that you can really shine? Because a lot of people, women and other previously marginalized groups, they shy away from self-advocacy. And an
Mm.
interview is exactly that. You
Mm.
are being asked to be proud of yourself and to package yourself and talk about yourself in a different way that we don't do in a day-to-day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, some people are held back from that. So we're all about also equipping them and helping them so that they can go and proudly talk about the successes that they've had. You had me at the beginning going, I want to hide when you're talking about me, right? Because
Mm.
we are. We're just not good, especially as women or, in
Mm-hmm.
other groups. We're not good at talking about the greatness that we are. It
Mm-hmm.
makes us feel uncomfortable. But
Yeah,
men
shining
don't.
brightly. Shine brightly.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's what synergy is all about.
Mm.
And so we have helped many people get into paid boards. We help people get into high profile boards so that they can start, creating those stepping stones to get onto paid boards. And we have placed so many people into executive boards. And we're also empowering those that didn't have governance now are going onto the boards because they feel comfortable and they feel
Mm.
empowered. And we're
Yeah.
doing it also internationally because we know the work is needed no matter where you are at.
Yeah, I love that, Trish. And what I really appreciate, what I'm hearing, is that you're helping others not only, develop the skills to be prepared, to be ready to take their leadership to the next level, whether that's a C-suite or, again, I love your point about the systems, because systems will kick you. They will kick you back unless you understand how the systems work. And developing that skill, I think, is really powerful. It's also finding opportunities. There's a powerful mindset, right? Like a growth mindset where, how do I look at things? What is new and good? What is that right mindset? And for me, that's my happy wheelhouse, is really getting people into that place. So through Synergy, you're helping individuals to find these opportunities. Are there any tips or insights that you can give to my listeners if maybe you're considering this and you're wanting to move to that next level, what could they look for? What could they do beyond, of course, going to connect with you, like to find those opportunities or to define them?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're talking about them being opportunity crusaders, because
Mm-hmm.
that's
Oh, I
one of
love
my,
that.
my brands is I'm an opportunity crusader.
Yeah.
And we talked at the beginning about how you must seek those opportunities because they're not going to seek you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what they can do is foster this mindset of curiosity. Be curious to say, if I'm not happy with where I am right now, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to do more, what is it that I need to do in order to get there? How can I empower myself in order to get there? And yeah, you don't need to come to Synergy. Not everybody needs to come through our company, but there's so much information out there online that you can start listening to YouTube. This world that we're in, where you've got a lot of great information online. Listen to podcasts, read about governance, read about leadership, set goals for yourself. That one is very, very, excuse me, very critical. Setting goals so that you can say, I'm going to get there. But now setting goals is only one way. How do you create that path for you to get there? That's where that curiosity comes in. And I tell people to be like private investigators, to where if you want to get to that end point, there isn't a straight path. Sometimes you're going to meander, sometimes you're going to get some blocks, but what information do you need that will help you to get there, right? And the other piece that is so critical for them too, for your listeners, is mentorship. Mentorship
Mm.
is great. Your
Yep.
journey, my journey are different, and we made the mistakes. We learned through our journey, and we are very eager to share that information with others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tap into somebody else that have walked the path so that you don't have to make the same mistake. And
Yeah.
most people are also scared to ask for mentorship. They're going, oh, maybe they're gonna say no. Oh, that's the worst thing that can happen is they say no. But ask so that you
Mm.
can get that guidance.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting too, Trish, when I reflect back, just in my own personal journey, and what's important to all the listeners is know that if you don't have a mentor, that's
Mhm,
okay. But there's an and as well.
mhm,
Who could you make a list right now? Who would be some individuals that maybe you could tap into? Take action. It's one thing to hear this, but what is the action that you can take today that will continue to move your life forward? We must get more intentional. We must connect just out of our mind into our heart and connect to all of those areas, the heart, the mind, to that higher calling and consciousness. Because this is what we're doing. We're raising conscious leaders. We're raising up individuals. We're empowering them to know their own story, to connect like what Trish has done, which is through her story. She was not born here. She was born in a different country, but found ways to self-discover, to know that truth of herself, that I can. And one thing that I wanted to go back to, just to kind of, as we go into sustainable impact, is those 4 areas, that is the 4 agreements. Be impeccable with your word.
mhm.
Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best.
I
I'm
live by
hearing, I love it, right?
I live by the 4 agreements.
Yeah. And I
Mhm,
think this really grounds us back into what you've been sharing and stating, because you have been in alignment with what you're thinking and what you're demonstrating, what you're showing the world. So, what would you say is your area of genius? Like, of all the things that you have right now, what would be your area of genius, Trish?
Ooh, I think I'm so blessed that I don't have one area of genius. I've got several areas, right? Um, I know that a lot of the systemic problems that are around the world, not only in Canada, but around the world, are all because of policies that were
Mm,
set by people. So, my area of genius is helping organizations look at those policies that have these innate inequities that, unbeknownst to them, because maybe they were set 50 years ago, but now they're still impacting how they're doing business within the organization. So I love policy work, and I also love what I call decolonizing the policies. where you're going in and you're updating the policies so they can reflect the inclusion that organizations are wanting to see within their own spaces. And what that does is, because we're all good human beings, and we
Mm.
all really want the people around us to be happy and to flourish. But as I said, you don't know what you don't know. So my area of genius is going in and just sitting with, whether it's a founder or it's, the HR, the head of HR, and saying, let's go through your policies and let's see where you can improve them. Right? And policies are there for a reason. They're there to guide everyone. But if we can improve them, won't everyone want that, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I really love doing that work. And I know a lot of people, feel powerless because they can't change things. But I see where the change can be made. And I see how I can empower those that hold the power to change it so that everyone else can feel welcome and can feel like they belong. And so, yeah, that's my power, is just to make sure that everyone feels like they belong.
I love that. And I believe in our innermost value alignment that you and I have always had
Mhm,
is that we're both catalysts for change.
mhm,
And how we bring about the change is, what you're doing with inclusion and diversity and the great work and synergy and all the work that you're transforming policies. Like, it makes so much sense. The alignment of how you're able to make that change is in service, right? Like through your government work that you're doing, all that. It makes so much incredible sense to me in this moment. And it's interesting. What I wanted to bring forward is that sustainable impact now,
mhm.
because we've seen through your own personal journey, we've now understood kind of how you approach the change and helping people to prepare to go through change. Now it's that sustainable change. And, you're so passionate about all of the things that you do. Do you have any advice for leaders who want to balance some of their short-term wins with maybe their long-term fostering sustainable inclusive change? Because you just started to talk about how some of these old policies, maybe they're antiquated. They don't really look at a cultural, multi-generational perspective. So do you have any advice for nonprofits, leaders, entrepreneurs that they can start to look at today in order to start to facilitate the change?
Yeah, I wish we had more time because I could go. I just had an amazing conversation with a leader that I met. I stayed extra in Ottawa to meet with some amazing leaders, and one of them, she is in the space of human rights policies. So
Mm.
just going and helping organizations look at human rights, because if you look at how many lawsuits organizations are getting, but it's all because their policies are not updated. And so they've got some gaps, especially nonprofits are susceptible to that because they
Mhm.
don't have in-house lawyers, most of them. So through revising the policies and making sure that you're foolproofing the organization is critical. So we can talk about sustainability on an individual or on a business. Which one would you like me to cover, because I know we are running out of time?
You know what? Whatever your heart is deciding, you pick. I'm good with both.
So I'll stay on the business side,
Yeah,
because the business is going to impact the people that are working
right.
with them. So I truly encourage organizations, in order to be sustainable, they need to look at not being stagnant or not being stale, but to be updated, based on so many changes that are happening around us, and to say, are we still relevant? So which takes me to the governance, which is where my day-to-day work is, where I love that space, because governance has three different modes that I really, always talk about. One is the fiduciary duty that you have, and the other one is the strategic duty that a board has. And most boards will stay in those two because that's where they know the most to do. But the third one that they don't venture into is the generative mode of governance.
Mhm.
So the generative mode of governance says, are we still relevant? Are we serving our interest holders the best way that we can? What needs to change? What needs to be true in order for the change to happen? So that generative mode really does what your Leadership Heart podcast is doing, is have that introspect
Mhm.
within a board to say what needs to be true. for change to happen. And so boards needs to look at it, and organizations needs to bring in that generative mode so that they can challenge themselves, look at where they need to change, and make those changes so that everyone can feel like they belong. And by the way, as teenagers, we don't lead with diversity because we believe that if a place is a place for people to belong, the diversity will happen naturally. You just have to create the space by doing the work that you need to do to make the organization the best that it can be, and people will step in, and that diversity becomes natural and inert.
I love that. What a beautiful way. So as we wrap up today in the Leadership Heart podcast, thank you so much again, Trish. I just really value all the great work that you're doing, your kindness to myself, to my family, to others in our communities of the Tri-Cities. You are an amazing city councilor. You're doing a lot of great work. For our parting remarks, is there anything that you'd like to say going into 2025 for all of our local community members, our global audience at hand? Is there any, thoughts from your values, from what you've experienced, recently in the work that you do that you'd like to share now?
Can I do a selfless plug first and then
Yes.
go to closing?
Yes, please.
So I have a book coming up, my children's book. It's actually being finalized. It was supposed to come out for Christmas, but we're just running a little late. But it's a book that actually is a story, my father's story, which is a very it's a sad story that is very positive in a way as well. So the book is called Follow the Railroad, and it's for kids from age 5 to about 8, like the reading age when they're starting to read. So please look out. I would love for people to come to those local people to come to the book launch. So that's that kids book. And my governance book is also in its final stages and will be coming in the fall. And again, I want to empower people through governance, especially, organizations that don't have those expertise in-house. That book is going to cover it all. So that's coming in the spring of 2025. Yeah, so going to the closing, I just want to tell your listeners that not only do they have an amazing person in you that they can lean into to define their journeys, but in order for us to be the best that we can be, we have to love ourselves first. And in order for us to love ourselves first, we need to be one with our minds, and we need to be able to be comfortable with really having that self-conversation and having even the conflict that happens within our own mind. We need to allow for space for that to happen. And once we do that, then let's venture into the curious world. Let's be curious to say, that person that you admire the most on what they're doing, how do they make it? And yes, you can make it as well. And yes, you can ask them to mentor you or to even a one-time meeting so that you can just learn some little things, so that you can also empower yourself. But lastly, what I want to say is the sky is the limit. You can be who you want to be. And there are different, definitions of leadership. Don't aspire to be somebody else that you're not. Just be the person that you're happy with. And that means different people. And that's all.
Lovely. Thank you for those wise, beautiful words from our distinguished counselor, Trish Mandewo. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up this amazing podcast. And what I'd like to say again to the viewers is hit the replay. Go to Spotify once we upload this session and listen again. What was something that you took away that then you can go in action? Was it something that maybe I need to revisit my why? Perhaps it's revisiting my values. Am I truly connected to my heart, to my mind? Or is my mind providing me some perhaps ways that I don't need to go anymore? What can you decide to release and let go of? What are some purposeful ways that you can bring in and challenge some of the policies that, if you are an entrepreneur or leading an organization, can you go back in today now and revisit those? Are they inclusive? Do they need to be changed? And if so, reach out to Trish, or do the good work so that you become relevant. I think that is the power. And the last thing is those 4 agreements. I think they're very powerful agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So let's all connect to our heart, to our minds, to that higher calling and consciousness, and let's continue to change and be bridges from where we are now to the absolute amazing imagined future that all of us can create. So I'm going to just send you Dust out, and we'll send the outro, and I'll catch you in just a moment, Trish. Thank you again. Appreciate you being on my podcast.
Thank you for having